Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Z'Carth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. Today we'll be covering the final match of the Grand Arena Championships exhibition, Round 1. We only have 3 matches in this particular Grand Arena Championships because it's still an exhibition. I won't lie, this was one of the most challenging Grand Arena matches I've ever had. And that's saying something. I've had a lot of really strong opponents. Looking at the match info, we can see that my opponent has over 300,000 more GP than I do. Furthermore, they have more Zetas, more Gear 12 characters, and better speed mods. Beyond me holding almost no significant advantage, their Bastila Shan and Darth Malak were significantly stronger than mine, despite what you see on the screen. I actually had the opportunity to be on while my opponent was attacking my forces. You can see here that they've already gotten 60 out of 60 banners against my Qi'ra team. Watching your opponent attack is like slowly being tortured, and at the same time, it's extremely thrilling. Now you see, they already got 60 more banners against my Karth team. So far, perfect score. Traditionally, my General Grievous team is excellent at taking extra banners off of my opponents when they attack, just because of Grievous's unique. As you can see, they only missed 3 banners against my Grievous team. I was starting to feel some pressure at this point. Happily for my stress levels, Rex and Wampa took 1 defense more than they were honestly intended for. Maybe my opponent was starting to falter. And then I noticed my Ewoks and Night Sisters had been defeated for very few lost banners. And all that was left was my Commander Luke team and my Gear 12 and 11 mixed Emperor Palpatine team. Could they hold the line? The answer was an emphatic no, they could not, and I was full cleared with only 1 successful defense to my name. My opponent had been incredibly efficient. That score was not bad, even for having lost 30 banners to 1 failed attack. The news didn't get much better. Their front line was incredibly strong. Night Sisters, General Grievous, Darth Revan, and a really strong, fast, tenacious Bossk and Bounty Hunter team. All of these teams combined to give me a lot to think about. I wasn't sure what teams I needed to use to beat which of his. Fortunately, I knew one for sure. Darth Revan versus Darth Revan mirror match. My opponent used Sith Marauder on this team instead of Sith Trooper. This is a wise move in some instances, especially when your Darth Revan and Bastila are faster than your opponent's. However, my Darth Revan was faster than his Darth Revan, and as such I was able to get the first attack off and put fear, which immobilizes the entire team, on the entire team first. However, I needed to beat Sith Marauder as fast as I could. He was able to one-shot my characters if I was able to give him an opportunity. As it stands, his HK-47 was also incredibly well modded and could do a lot of damage to me. I needed to finish him as well. One problematic factor about fighting Darth Revan mirror matches is that sometimes you just lose. The incredible offensive output on either side can really just end any number of characters at any given moment. Despite what you see here, with my 5 versus their 3, I was in no way in the clear. Plus, I needed to maximize my banners as much as possible because my opponent had been so incredibly efficient in their assault. In addition, their Gear 12 Malak far outstripped my Gear 11 Malak. With Dark Battle Meditation on me, I was unable to cause any debuffs to my opponent. I wanted to attack Bastila, however, with Malak taunting, I was unable to. Bastila is ridiculously resilient in the context of this team. She causes so much damage and so much hardship in the form of corrupted battle meditation that it brings me great joy when she dies screaming. At least I assume she screams. I don't actually listen to the sound in this game. Whereas I would normally preach saving banners as much as possible, this match is still far from over in some ways. Darth Malak is extremely resilient and has a lot of health steal. I was able to end him, but you'll notice that I lost 10 full banners here. That's a lot, considering my opponent really only lost a few less than the 30 for failing their one attack. Getting the win against Darth Revan opened a lot of possibilities for me. However, the Bossk team, which I normally want to fight with First Order or even troopers, was too fast. It's an extremely rare occasion that my First Order and trooper teams are not fast enough to deal with bounty hunters. Their Bossk had over 120 extra speed with a full tenacity set, which meant that the Jedi Training Ray team that I could have also used in this circumstance was probably out of the question as well. This really only left me with Padme, who's kind of my ringer in this circumstance. It may seem like ridiculous overkill to you, and if we're honest, it probably is. At this point, though, I was convinced that I would need to win every single attack of mine without even one fail, which meant I needed to be sure that I could clear this squad. I believe that this is the first time I had ever attempted to use the Padme squad against bounty hunters. The bounty hunters were all incredibly well modded, as you might expect from my opponent's roster. But Padme's team is meta right now. Despite the fact that they don't hold well on defense, they still make bounty hunters a trivial pursuit. This match was going exactly the way I wanted it. However, it was taking longer than I expected. Getting the win here was all but assured from the very start. Bounty hunters aren't the same caliber team as the Padme squad, but the fact that I only got 57 banners kind of stung. I'm accustomed to getting a full 60 against bounty hunters. My opponent should be commended for their excellent job of modding an incredibly difficult and powerful bounty hunter squad. The Karth team with Wampa was one I'd heard of but hadn't been able to face yet, and Qui-Gon Jinn, though he can be problematic at times, is not really a powerful team, even with Barriss there to help heal. Now came the real conundrum. I typically use Traya to beat Grievous Droids or Night Sisters. I couldn't choose both. I also needed to keep my Jedi Revan squad for the back zone, just in case my opponent had gone crazy and put in his Jedi Revan in that zone. That meant finding an extra squad that could beat either General Grievous or Night Sisters. I've had a lot of success using bounty hunters against Night Sisters, though, predictably, this Night Sister squad was incredibly well modded and was going to be very difficult to shift. I was not sure if my bounty hunters were up to the task. You'll notice throughout the match that I'm constantly trying to find a way for Boba or Jango to get a one-hit kill on one of the Night Sisters. Boba's Execute and Jango Fett's unique Zeta allows them to make attacks that instantly defeat a Night Sister without hopes of revival, with the exception of Zombie. The goal here is to remove one Night Sister at a time entirely from the fight. Only Boba and Jango are able to bypass Zombie's taunt using Bounty Hunter's Resolve, and Zombie is moving at far too fast a rate for any of my other Bounty Hunters to reliably bypass that taunt themselves. Night Sisters are frustrating on several different levels, but one of the most frustrating aspects to them are their stuns. Daka can stun 2 at a time, Asajj can stun on her basic, Spirit can stun on her unique. By far, my best weapons against them are Boba and Jango, and with them stunned consistently, it makes the match really difficult. This was one of my most intense attacks for this entire round of Grand Arena. Things can go south against Night Sisters incredibly quickly, and my bounty hunters were very close to finished. Fortunately, bounty hunters are incredibly resilient themselves, and after nearly 2 full minutes of fighting, I was able to get my first kill with Jango, meaning that Talzin would not come back to any revive, regardless of leadership or ability. I wasn't out of the water yet, but beating Talzin was a huge step in my favor. You'll note that I had not even at this point earned the contract. With the contract finally earned, things were starting to look up. Destroying the still stunning Daka was incredibly satisfying. With only 2 remaining Night Sisters who could deal real damage, it looked like I had won my gambit. I now needed to focus on maximizing as many banners as possible. The goal now was to continue to hit Zombie and cause her to resurrect as many times as needed until all of my bounty hunters were at full health and protection. Zombie is a wonderful and powerful character. However, she does open the door for a lot of teams to be able to get close to max points against Night Sisters. To be honest, I was just happy with a win. This was one of the biggest question mark matches that I had. Getting 59 banners on top of it is kind of just gravy. And now I needed to win the fight that I both love and hate. I love watching General Grievous work. It's a beautiful thing. I don't necessarily enjoy watching him do it to my own characters, however, which seems to be all too often the case of late in Grand Arena. Traya is the obvious choice here because of her multiple levels of control. If you can control the taunt and the counterattack of Magna Guard and then isolate B2, you can win the battle without much real threat. The goal is always to execute Grievous first if you can manage it, though if your fracture comes off of Magna Guard at the wrong time, it can be tricky and you might have to hold Annihilate for a turn or 2. Getting B2 isolated is of utmost importance. Otherwise, every time you attack, he is at risk of gaining full turn meter and being able to debuff your entire team. Even though the debuffs aren't necessarily as important or damaging to a Traya squad, the fact that he's applying debuffs gives his entire team an enormous amount of turn meter throughout the match. Every single turn Grievous goes, he gets stronger, so giving him turn meter is not necessarily the most awesome thing in the world. Of course, the team is built to make it extremely difficult to avoid that, even with B2 isolated. I was gratified to note that B1 had keeled over earlier than expected, despite giving Grievous an extra turn because of his unique Zeta. Scion, after a minute and a half, finally got his invincible debuff, which was going to make him difficult to shift. For everyone except for Grievous, that is. With Magna Guard gone and Nihilus ready for Annihilate, the question was how many banners could I salvage? As it turns out, not very many. The Sith team is really good on offense, but is really not great at preserving banners. 51, whereas it's a win, is not very efficient. At this point, I was certain, without having to do the math, that if I failed even a single attack, my opponent would win, regardless of my efforts afterward. Their backline was both reassuring and troubling. There were very few easy matchups left, and I needed to find one team that troopers could beat. Or I needed to pull another team out of my hindquarters, which I was not really confident of being able to do against the caliber of teams that I was facing in the back line here. I needed to clear the jumble out of my head and reduce the total number of options I had available. Having options is great, but they can also lead to some catastrophic mistakes if you're not careful. Please note here how intentional I was with every attack, stunning Kylo and being able to prevent him from granting turn meter to the rest of the team, as well as doing minor damage to my protection scores, was going to be very important to getting max banners against this squad. When Kylo gets to use his AoE, not only does it hurt my protection, but it also feeds massive amounts of TM, which is turn meter, to the enemy. You don't want them to start the turn meter train. Jedi Training Rey is a wonderful team because of how much control you actually have in the matchup. You can daze and reduce turn meter. You have tenacity down in the form of BB-8. You have expose, which helps crack even the toughest opponents, with the exception of the two Kylos, who ignore damage over time and expose damage for the most part. Another important factor to fighting First Order is to keep Kylo Ren unmasked from being able to use his 2-turn stun on any of your team, especially BB-8, though sometimes if it's applied to Jedi Training Rey, it can also be catastrophic. At this point in the game, using Jedi Training Rey is much more like a scalpel rather than using a bludgeon. She's a control piece, and whereas some people are able to do a lot of damage with her without understanding her mechanics, you're going to get a lot more mileage out of using this team, knowing all of the different mechanics and rules and interactions that you have available for you. I'm really excited to have more Resistance members join this team because it's a lot of fun, but it has gotten a little out of date. The 3 remaining teams were Qi'ra, zCarth with Wampa, and that strange Qui-Gon Jinn team that I really wasn't sure what to expect. I needed to use troopers against one of these 3 teams, or I could form a Jedi Misfits team using Bastila and other random Jedi like Ezra and Ayla, who are both powerful in their own right, but probably not consistent enough damage dealers against this team who has Zeta Barriss in it. Troopers were definitely risky here, though. I needed to avoid using AoEs that would hurt Ayla because she could counter, and if she stunned one of my troopers, it was potentially game over. That's a lot of the reason I elected to take Shore Trooper over Snow Trooper, both because of his special, which prevents critical hits, which is the only way Ayla is able to stun, and also because Snow Trooper's AoE was going to be far less useful if I couldn't fire at Ayla. I really hope Ayla gets a solid rework in the coming months. She's one of my favorite Jedi, but she really doesn't have a home currently. As you can see, this fight is dragging on a little longer than I would probably prefer for troopers, but I'm not in a bad spot. I was able to get the first kill, which means all of my troopers are loaded with turn meter. Being able to get death mark on Barriss ended the match as quickly as possible. All of the troopers have critical hit immunity right now, and it's only a matter of time before she succumbs. Getting 60 banners was a surprise, but a welcome one. 2 teams remained to be countered by my 2 teams. They had a Qi'ra team with Nest, as well as a Karth team with Wampa. At first, I was worried about Wampa's AoE daze against First Order, but then I realized that Nest also had an AoE daze, and it was just something I was going to have to risk. First Order is another team that can be highly technical if you play it right. You want to make sure that you use all of the tools you have at your disposal. In this case, I decided I needed to take Wampa out of the fight before anything else, so I used KRU's double turn stun to take him out of the fight. Zalbar taunts once someone gets below 100 health, and so I took a little time taking protection off of each team member before committing to hitting Carth and effectively starting the Zalbar taunt. When I did hit Carth, I did so right before First Order Stormtrooper went, which meant that I was able to dispel using his basic. I get it. First Order Stormtrooper is a hard farm and requires a Zeta for a team that is no longer in favor. He's one of the best utility tanks in the game, being able to counter, dispel on basic, as well as call multiple assists throughout the match. That doesn't even include that he's a relatively reliable tank to use as well, which most people see that as the start and end of his functionality. You see that my attacks are bouncing back and forth between Zalbar and Wampa here. That's because I need to control Zalbar and his taunt if I'm going to be able to get full banners in this matchup. With Wampa effectively out of the game with his 2-turn stun, I had the leisure to be able to ignore him for the most part while I attacked Zalbar. I used Kylo's stun a lot more this round than I normally do, just to control the enemy team. I was in the business of collecting banners, not just attacking willy-nilly, so using a stun on a squad that can't shake stun seemed like a good idea. I highly doubt that my use of the word willy-nilly was an equally good idea. I've seen a couple videos referencing that Canderous is amazing at Gear 13. I know that he gains a huge amount of offensive ability, but I'm not convinced that that's enough to save the slow death of Old Republic as a solid defensive team in this format. Despite my difficulty with them in my last round, they can be defeated by several different teams. Only Qi'ra and Nest remained, alongside Jedi Revan and his band of annoyingly resilient Jedi. My first challenge in this match was finding Plo on the character screen. Once I was finally able to locate him, the match progressed in a positive, effective manner. The thing that I noticed first off against this team was that they had a Gear 11 Vander Chewbacca. He's one of the easiest characters to get to Gear 12. Please, guys, if you're going to run this team, get Vander Chewbacca to Gear 12. It's not that hard, and it does an amazing amount of good for the team. With Vander punching his ticket so quickly, the match immediately became a how fast can you kill Nest contest. I realized that there are other characters still remaining, but that's only a formality at this point. Nest is really the only one that I'm even remotely worried about removing before the rest of the match is over. The use of Royal Guard on this team is a really interesting choice, and I think I like it. His passive taunt can be really frustrating for a lot of teams. Not really for Jedi Revan, but for a lot of other teams, Royal Guard can be annoying. Unfortunately, at this point, he's annoying at best, but that's actually a really good use for him in the context of Grand Arena. Please enjoy the show as Nest's maximum health slowly approaches a number that my 5-year-old can count to. It can take a while, but she does eventually go down. I believe that the original Nest nerf was instituted because of Jedi Revan and the silly things people were doing with Nest in addition to Maul. You can see Nest's max health bars are starting to look like she's level 75 or something. She still takes a while to get down all of her protection that she's stored up, but now that she took a turn, she's wide open for an easy kill. 60 banners on this match as well makes 4 total matches in the back zone that I was able to max out. As the final numbers scrolled on the screen, I was relieved to see that I had beat my opponent by 7 points. If you ignore the inefficiency of a failed attack, my opponent had been 23 full banners more efficient than I was. After this match, I hit rank 42. That includes having achieved every single feat possible, as well as winning all of my matches and beating every team on my first try. I was extremely lucky that my opponent had misjudged my Rex team, or otherwise I almost certainly would have lost this match. As things stand, I was thrilled to be able to go toe-to-toe with someone who had 300,000 more GP than I did. They had been incredibly efficient and had done a really good job of constructing a defense that was very challenging for me and required me to use a lot of teams that I was uncomfortable using in the first round. The addition of Gear 13 to the next Grand Arena is going to throw a new wrinkle into things. I really don't know what to expect. I hope that my Darth Revan is going to be fast enough to beat other people's Darth Revan and Bastila. The thing I'm most looking forward to in the next Grand Arena Championships exhibition is being able to chase the Kyber League, which means I'll have to win almost every single match and beat every single feat. At any rate, I think we're going to call this one done. Thank you so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Zareth prevails.